Good evening and welcome to CYC News for today, the 22nd of February 2015 and the 15th of Mshir 1731. I'm Sam Hannah.
And I'm Anastasia Atia. In today's headlines, Syrian Bishop says Aleppo siege circumstances tragic as we wait for the freeze in fighting. UN envoy urges push to end crisis in Libya. Scene of Copts beheaded in Libya is considered the most precious document of martyrdom and faith. Islamic State Beheading Copts was messaged to infidel West, and the Diocese of Sydney and the Australian Coptic Movement protest in the Sydney CBD against the recent beheadings in Libya.
In our top story, Armenian Catholic Archbishop of Aleppo, Botros Mariati, said, "The situation in the city of Aleppo did not change. It is still under siege. We live in tragic circumstances. The Syrian state controls only 1/3 of the city. We will wait for a freeze in the fighting." Botros Mariati said in an interview with Italian news agency Aki on Thursday, while he was in Rome, the lack of water and electricity, which work daily for only 1 hour, will be cut off all the day, which will lead to this tragic situation. In addition, we have a shortage in fuel also, so we suffer from the very cold winter, especially children. However, life is ongoing. The Catholic Archbishop added that people have great concerns, which is the primary motivation for immigration, and approximately half of the people of the diocese have immigrated. The number of Christian immigrants increased greatly after a bomb exploded in the Diocese of Aleppo a few months ago, as well as the displacement of Christians last June during the events of Mosul. The children of the parishes are afraid that the same scene be repeated. He stated, "There is a lack of medicine as well, which negatively affects the people. The situation is bad because lack of human conditions and security. We wait the ceasefire and the freezing of fighting in Aleppo. We hope to reach an agreement in this regard to be able to live in peace and safety in our city of Aleppo."
In the wake of recent savage terrorist acts that left 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians dead after a mass beheading in Libya, the United Nations envoy to Libya stressed the imminent danger facing the country and urged swift agreement to resolve the crisis. In a statement released by the UN Wednesday, UN support mission in Libya, head and spokesman Bernardo Leon condemned the horrific and brutal acts witnessed in recent weeks, saying, "No words can express my outrage and revulsion at the beheading of 21 men, including 20 Egyptian nationals who were targeted for no other reason than their religious belief or nationality." The statement stressed, however, that this one act should not eclipse the barbarity of other actions committed by extremist groups, including the Islamic State group and Ansar al-Sharia. Leon highlighted other examples of people murdered by extremists in Libya. These are but a few of the many countless incidents which every day affect thousands of civilians who bear the brunt of war and displacement of victims of serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law, especially in areas like Benghazi. The UN statement quoted Leon as saying, "Libya, its people, and the wider region are at risk of even more turmoil if agreement is not reached," the statement added. "It is crucial for the international community as a whole to maintain unity of purpose through coherent messaging and actions. Our efforts to counter terrorism in a sustainable manner cannot be a series of isolated acts, and we should not allow terrorism to disrupt the political dialogue," said Leon.
Social networking sites have highlighted the faith of Egypt's Coptic Christians in Jesus Christ and the repetition of the words, "Lord Jesus Christ," in their last moments before being beheaded by Islamic State group militants. During the funeral mass for the Egyptian Copts martyred in Libya, Pope Tawadros II, Pope Alexander, and Patriarch of See of the St. Mark said they would receive the crown of martyrdom and faith because they were subjected to pressures to deny their faith, but they adhered to Jesus. The Pope said, "These acts strengthen the faith of Christians, and the history of the Church shows that oppression and crisis promote faith." Pope Francis, Pope of the Vatican, also called for praying for the beheaded Copts. He said, "They were killed simply for the fact that they were Christians. The blood of our Christian brothers and sisters is a witness that cries out to be heard. It makes no difference whether they are Catholics, Orthodox, Copts, or Protestants. They are Christians. Their blood is one and the same. Their blood confesses Christ." Observers said that the shocking video published on the internet, faith of those beheaded Copts and repetition of the word Jesus Christ, have many indications confirming target of the Copts due to their religious background, as well as adherence of those Copts to their Christianity and faith, and not submission to their pressure to deny their faith to maintain their lives. The social networking sites praised the attitude of the Coptic martyrs, who faced death bravely and adhered to their faith regardless of any pressure. Bishop Makarios of Minya said beheading of 21 Copts in Libya by the IS militants is a document and a vivid picture of martyrdom. He described the video published Sunday as shocking and terrifying, adding that the beheading Copts are martyrs because they were killed for being Christians and were subject to threats and pressures, and if they had converted to Islam, they would have not been killed. The Copts lost their lives for their faith. Thus, we should be proud of them and we consider them martyrs. They are martyrs as they were not killed after their abduction. IS gave them time to deny their faith, so Copts had a chance to abandon their faith and principles to maintain their lives. But none of them had abandoned their faith, although ISIS threatened to kill them brutally. The video showed that the Copts were strong until the last moment and they repeated the word, Lord Jesus Christ. Throughout the Christian history, martyrs were strong alike, those beheaded Copts, and the only difference is that this time we have a video showing their martyrdom, says Bishop Markorios. He added that the beheading scene is the most precious document showing their martyrdom and strong faith. He mentioned that they know stories of the martyrs from the manuscripts, books, eyewitnesses, images, and icons, but that video will be a vivid document on young men who adhered to their faith until the last moment, and they repeated the name of Jesus Christ before taking their last breath.
The mother of Kyrillos Bishara, one of the Coptic Christians killed in Libya by the Islamic State, said she is not sad for the death of her son, but happy because she offered him as a martyr for Christ. I pray to God to fill the hearts of the IS members with faith, the mother added. I do not want anyone to comfort me, but I am sending condolences to every mother and father suffering for the death of their son, said the mother. I am confident that the blood of the villagers' martyrs who will fill heaven with light because they kept their faith.
Suleiman Aziz, a Coptic Christian who was displaced from Asyut Governorate by thugs who seized his property, said he became homeless after leaving his village in Abu Tig. He noted that he was forced to travel to Asyut to meet Asyut's Director of Security. He explained that he fled his village upon advice by the Deputy Minister of the Interior for Human Rights until his problem is unsolved, but he could not meet him because of the bureaucracy of the secretaries. Aziz said the Abu Tig police station assisted the thugs to seize my land and 2 houses I with my brothers inherited from my father, to the extent that they came back to seize my property again after they restored to me by a court ruling. Aziz appealed to the Interior Minister to protect him from the thugs and restore his seized property with the help of the Abu Tig police station. He explained that he lost his livelihood and couldn't afford his life's needs. Aziz added, I have no shelter after I left my village, and there is no breadwinner for me and my sick mother, whom we have not told about what happened due to her deteriorating health. An influential family in Asyut seized the property of a Suleiman Aziz family at gunpoint. The family fabricated a number of complaints against Aziz and his brother by the help of the Abu Tig police station. Aziz fled his village due to the oppression of his family and failure of the security forces to protect him and to restore his property. Hussein bin Mahmoud, a scholar of the Islamic State group, said in an article published on the internet on Tuesday that the churches in Cairo must be demolished according to fatwas by Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah is a hardline Islamic scholar who was born in 1263 AD in Turkey. He authored several books which have become part of the Islamic heritage. Hardliners and elements of tafkiri groups depend on these books because they permit killing, beheading and burning of non-Muslims or infidels. Bin Mahmoud added in the article that the churches in Cairo must be destroyed because they were built after Islam, and Cairo is a new city inhabited by Muslims that did not have churches before. Bin Mahmoud claimed that the churches in Upper Egypt could be kept if they have existed since the Islamic conquest, after Muslims reconciled with Christians to keep them. There should be no new churches in Muslim countries, he said. Bin Mahmoud said he gave his opinion on the demolition of the churches and the beheading of the Christians and others according to fatwas by Ibn Taymiyyah. In regard to the fatwa relied upon for the beheading of Egyptians in Libya, he explained that he based his fatwa on Ibn Taymiyyah.
Journalist and media worker Ibrahim Issa said Egyptian President Abdel Fattah El-Sisi has a clear vision against extremism and terrorism, and he stressed that the problem is in the thought which must be renewed. Issa stressed that the president relies on Al-Azhar in the renewal of the religious thought. In his TV show yesterday, Issa added that Al-Azhar sanctifies Islamic history and denies everything it does not like it. The Islamic Caliphate, which was based in Sharia, was brutal and its leaders involved in bloody clashes, Issa said. According to Issa, there should be no dialogue with terrorism and political Islam groups because they all belong to the same Salafiyya Wahhaba movement, which does not accept others. Issa noted that the airstrikes can't eliminate the Islamic State. He explained that several airstrikes were launched against the IS by the international coalition aircraft, causing the organization huge losses, but they did not eliminate it.
The Libyan Al-Mustaqbal website reported on Tuesday new details about the beheading of the Egyptian Coptic Christians in Libya by the Islamic State. The website quoted sources close to jihadi elements as the new video of the beheadings of the Egyptian Christians was a message to threaten the infidel West. The video was intended to convey the message that the citizens of the Western countries would no longer have peace of mind as long as their countries do not support ISIL and withdraw from the international coalition that has waged airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. According to the Libyan website, the commander who led the execution of the Copts is a British citizen born to a Libyan mother and is wanted by British security services for joining the Islamic State group. The website revealed that the terrorist travelled to Syria and received training there by the Islamic State and went later to Iraq and then to Libya. The website pointed out that a member of the IS called Abu Muhammad al-Libi said the Egyptian hostages asked to phone their families before the execution, but the IS refused, for firstly, infidel prisoners have no rights, and secondly, to prevent the identification of the location of the kidnapped hostages. The website quoted al-Libi as saying that the killing of those who are not loyal to the Islamic State is permissible, especially non-Muslims who should not be trusted.
Pope Tawadros II of Alexandria celebrated a Mass on Tuesday in St. Mark Cathedral in Abyssinia for the souls of the martyrs of the faith and the nation who were killed in Libya. In his speech during the Mass, the Pope said, "Beheading 21 Copts by the Islamic State is an unacceptable act by any human or any religion. They are martyrs of faith as they maintain their faith to their last breath, and God will give them a crown of martyrdom. The Church has even given many martyrs, and the country is still offering more martyrs. The ages of martyrs are always bright and encouraging for our lives." He added that the martyrs who die for defending their land are precious before God. The Pope noted that the government warned Egyptians of travelling to Libya, asserting that the Egyptian armed forces and the police forces are Egypt's first line of defence. The Pope added, President Sisi, along with Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab and the ministers of the Egyptian government, offered condolences and took measures to relieve the families of the victims. They decided building a church of the 21 martyrs in the village of Al-Minya, from which most of the martyrs came and visited the village. His Holiness continued, all the Egyptian people offered condolences, whether by attending or sending telegraphs. We all know these good feelings. We were also visited by Dr. Ahmed Al-Tayyib, Sheikh of Al-Hazar, and the delegation from Al-Hazar, a group of ambassadors and Libyan officials, including the Libyan ambassador to Cairo, and a multitude of artists came to offer condolences. Pope Francis and Father Matthias, Patriarch of Ethiopia, phoned us to extend solace.
The beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians in Libya earlier this week was not an isolated case, Britain's Telegraph wrote on Monday, but rather the latest of countless outrages perpetrated against Christians in or near the Church's biblical heartlands over many years. More than 600,000 Christians have left Egypt over the last 3 decades, wrote Rupert Short, reminding readers not to be blinded by Cairo's retaliatory bombings against the Islamic State-affiliated terrorists who carried out the beheadings. Short described interviewing Coptic immigrants in Britain, many of whom recounted stories of injustice or fears of militant Islamic groups as catalysts for leaving the country. Acute hostility to Christians in the Middle East long predates the invasion of Iraq, wrote Short. A grim irony of Charlie Hebdo murders and recent violence in Copenhagen is that Arab Christians endure far more vehement insults at the hands of Wahhabists than do Muslims from secular satirists in the West. This point is largely lost on the European media, but the hypocrisy is not ignored by Egyptian writers. Shaw goes on to describe the exodus of Christians from Mosul and how young people have fled to Jordan, do not want to return to their homes in Iraq because of the influx of Islamic radicals. Short wrote, it goes without saying that a huge proportion of Muslims in the region bear no ill will towards their Christian fellow Christians, citizens. Blood is being spilled by fanatics who hold that the more martial sections of the Quran law apply to these situations, rather as a mainstream interpretation, would rather have it to a particular historical monument where Muhammad's earliest followers were in mortal danger. Shaw continues, but although the culprits are a minority, discrimination against Christians and other minorities, as opposed to overt persecution, in Muslim-majority countries forms as a further layer of injustice, rather unacknowledged either by the societies themselves or by Western governments, frightened of ruffling of feathers.
Australia has once again shown both solidarity and outrage. The beheadings made international headlines, and the Diocese of Sydney and its affiliated regions, together with Australian Coptic Movement Association, peacefully protested in the streets of Sydney's central business district at Martin Place, the same location the Sydney siege took place just 2 months ago. Christians gathered from parts of New South Wales, the east, west, north and south to stand together in unity with one voice against the barbaric attacks targeted specifically at Coptic Christians.
Our entire Egyptian community and indeed the world. As horrifying as this ISIS attack has been, it has certainly revealed one thing: the strength of the Christian faith and also the resilience of the Egyptian people. I, like all of you here today, have been moved by the strength of the victims' families.
Australian politician and leader of the Christian Democratic Party, Reverend Fred Nile, condemned the demonic attack on Egyptian Coptic Christians in Libya on behalf of Australia's Christian Democratic Party on Monday. Reverend Nile said in a statement released on the party website, the Foreign Minister, Syrian Bishop, must clearly convey Australia's view on this barbaric act to Australian public and especially to the large Australian Coptic community in Australia, which numbers up to 120,000 Australian-wide. I pose the question of what action has the Australian government taken since they secured a seat on the UN Secretary Council. He continued on to ask what assistance has been provided to the Egyptian government. What action is the Australian government and the United Nations going to take to prevent these massacres of innocent Christians in Libya and around the world? He asked, stressing Coptic leaders in Australia's concern over the rising threat of the Islamic State. We support demands of the Australian Coptic Movement, Association for Coptic Christians, to be officially included in any proposed increase to the Australian refugee intake. They have been suffering for decades, both in Egypt and Libya, yet minimal action has been taken by the Department of Immigration and Citizenship, he said. Now is the time for Australia to use its seat on the United Nations to support the most vulnerable communities in the world. North Africa's Coptic Christians are one of those communities, stated Reverend Nile.
The Libya Herald reported that about 35 Egyptians were kidnapped in different parts of Libya after Egypt launched airstrikes in cooperation with the Libyan army against Islamic State strongholds in the wake of IS beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians earlier this week. The Libya Herald, which did not mention the source of its information, said groups affiliated to IS in Libya and Ansar al-Sharia kidnapped the Egyptians, according to Yom newspaper. The newspaper added that most of these Egyptians work in agriculture. He emphasised that it received a report that the number of abductees was 7 Egyptians, but the number increased following the attacks Monday morning to reach 35 as of Monday evening.
The families of the abductees protested in Cathedral of the St. Mark, Abbasiyah, asking the government and all the responsible entities to save their children and relatives who were abducted in Libya. His Holiness Pope Tawadros II assigned Bishop Julius, the General Bishop of the Churches of Ancient Egypt, to communicate with the families of the abductees who belonged to Salmeut, Armenia. His Grace Bishop Julius and the families of the abductees met with the governmental committee that was headed by the Prime Minister. This session resulted in forming a committee of 3 ambassadors to communicate with all parties concerned by the crisis of the Egyptian Foreign Ministry and the state of Libya and the people of the abductees and the exceptional pension by the state disbursement to the families of the kidnapped due to the interruption of their livelihood as a result of the absence of a breadwinner.
The Egyptian President El-Sisi visited St. Mark's Cathedral at Abbasiyah in order to offer his condolences to His Holiness Pope Tawadros II for the loss of the 21 Egyptians who were martyred in Libya. El-Sisi said, "Tribulations make us stiffness and strength. We avenge their blood, for the whole people are hurt because of this incident." His Holiness Pope Tawadros thanked him for his visit and for his great efforts for striking hard with his air force at Islamic State positions in eastern Libya. However, Egyptian Christians interpret this as more of a national defence move than a specific defence of their community.
And that's all from CYC News. Stay tuned for more Christian content on CYC. I'm Sam Hannah.
And I'm Anastasia Atia from the Sydney studios in Australia. Good night and God bless.